repeat the non-conformist oath. I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat things other people say.
Welcome back to Positive Blatherings. I say welcome back, and it's been, I don't know how many months since I've done this show because I'm too busy helping other people with their podcasts and can't be bothered to do my own. But in the case that I do run across someone who I think I really, really want to talk to on my podcast, then I make every effort to do so. And today is no exception. Stacey Steinmiller is on the podcast, and she's my coach. Put me in, coach. You're, I just want to say that you have made a big difference in my day to day, in my business and my personal life. And I didn't think it was possible. So thank you.
I'm happy for you. That's all I want for my clients is to make that positive impact. And I'm just glad how fast and receptive you've been to the work. And, so I can only take credit for my side, and the results really only happen based off my clients. So you're getting the results because you put in the work.
Right.
Yeah.
And but you gave me the work, and I'm not usually good at this kind of stuff. So I'm like, all right, so maybe I'm like kicking ass right now, but in a month you're going to be like, Scott, what's going on? You were doing so well. So anyway, so what's the name of your coaching business, and how did you get started?
Okay. So the name of my coaching business is called Radical Evolution. And I guess there's a story on how that came to be.
There's always a story.
Yeah. But it got started as a transition from my therapy practice, which was called Authentic Self-Counseling, which I started in 2014. And then in late 2021 is when I officially got my DBA for the coaching. And then I slowly transitioned over. And then June 2022, I left my therapy practice completely to focus completely on the coaching.
And you had your own therapy practice, or were you part of a group?
My own. Yeah, it was just me. So I was also used to the one-man bands.
Yeah, so you didn't have that. So I guess we can go back to that, but you didn't have that terrified jumping off point, at least here, but you did before when you started your therapy practice.
Yes. And so that was kind of big. So it took me a while to fully transition from like a 9-to-5 or having other W-2 jobs into full-time into my therapy practice. And I did that very slowly to make sure that I was, stable financially. And then once I was able to make that jump, I made that jump. So this time I wanted to give myself the experience of fully jumping. I'm laughing because I'm remembering of how I felt then. And now I have more wisdom now of like, I should be able to get this where I want in like 6 months. I've done this before. This is easy peasy. I know how to build business. I know what to do. I'm well established in Rochester, especially. And, but it was a different road than I expected. So so now I feel like I've had both experiences, the slow transition and the jumping in the deep end without any floaties.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I had both kind of at the same time. It was like, it's been a slow transit. When I started Rockvox, I was still working full-time in radio. So I had, and that was for 2 years until the pandemic sort of forced my hand out of radio. There was no point in me being there because of the pay cuts and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, here's the choice. Do I stick with this and see what I can get out of it, or do I jump full force into Rockvox and put that time that I'm the first, 4 or 5 hours of the morning that I'm spending sitting there at the radio station like this, doing nothing? Or do I put that energy into this business and try to grow it? And that's what I decided to do. Thankfully, my wife has always sort of been the breadwinner in the family. So we were at a position to where I could actually do that and not cause too much of a ruckus.
Yeah.
I had my little things that I had to do, that I had to take care of. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And we were open for 2.5 years already. So we'd already kind of established some things, and I took over this business, which is how I was able to start it. So there was more in there, but I know that feeling of like, and especially when you go, it's not too deep. And then you jump and you're like, whoa, this is way deper than I thought.
Right. It's deeper. It's colder. There's sharks in there. You're like, oh man, I was not prepared.
Then what kind of a support structure did you have for yourself when you were making these changes, or did you?
I mean, I had coaches, I had my coaches. I think I was expecting some magic from all that work. And I believe there is a lot of magic in the work, and not that the magic wasn't happening, because it really was, but taking my entire salary without any backup away was probably not the best decision for me. So yeah, but I had coaches, and a lot of people believe in me, and they did then, they still do now. So I have a strong support network just in general. With a lot of people that believe in me, and I don't think I could do it without that. And my family has always been. I know I'm really lucky. A lot of people don't have supportive family, and I do. And I think I've proven, I don't like to use that word, myself to a lot of people over the years with building the therapy practice and making it successful as it was. And then I also took over renting out an office suite as well and made that successful. And that was a big jump too at the time. So I think people that have known me for a long time see that I always make things work. There isn't a failure in my book. I don't let it happen.
Nice.
Yeah.
If you could go back to, is there a singular moment in your upbringing, in your childhood, or whatever part in your life where you decided that your goal in life was to help people get better?
That's a good question. I was really resistant to the work, to be honest. I remember at one point saying, like, I don't want to be a social worker. Like, I just was really...
Was it because of the money, or?
Well, yeah. No, like, I always wanted to be rich. I
mean, who doesn't?
I wanted to be in a powerful position, a wealthy position. So going to school for social work, like, there was none of that. And even in your master's program, they literally tell you, they're like, expect to be poor. It's a lot of, and I went to Roberts Wesleyan for my master's. So there's not a requirement for the faith for a master's program there. There is for the undergrad. But still, it, attracts mostly faith-based, and it's highly female. So it's often usually more of the female that's kind of just working just because they want to help. But yeah, they're not the breadwinner. They're not supporting right. Like, they're usually married to somebody who, is doing that role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that must have been an interesting dynamic in your studies.
It was interesting. Especially I remember the first day of classes. And the majority of the classes started out with prayer. And I was like, oh, whoa, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I went to Catholic high school, so I'm kind of used to that. Well, I was used to that. But that's an interesting kind of thing, though. I didn't even think about that at Wesleyan, is that they started out it as a religious college.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of a little bit of culture shock for someone who's not used to that.
Well, I mean, but I was raised Catholic. I went to church every Sunday.
Okay.
And actually my first job was an organist at a church. So I'm really
Dude,
weird.
you're the church lady. Holy crap.
I was, yes.
This is crazy.
It really is crazy. So, I mean, it was nice money. It was like $50 a Sunday,
And this was what, when you were in high school, or?
Yeah, I was in high school.
Yeah,
so that was like really good money.
Hell yeah.
And so it was something that I knew and I liked it. So it's not like unfamiliar, but I had been on my own spiritual journey and so forth and things with religion, throughout that. So I knew I could feel comfortable. But I also, one funny story is I didn't realize I did have to like sign off on, I don't know, like a moral code or something. I have a problem of signing things without reading them. And one time we were having to do this study, I can't remember, it was like for a stats class. And I was like, oh, we should go to the bar and do it. And one of my friends was like, we can't do that. Like, it's against the rules. I was like, we're over 21. Like, we legally can drink. I don't understand the problem. And she's like, no, we like signed off this thing. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't realize I did that.
Where is it? Where is that dastardly piece of paper? What does it say? Exactly.
I was like, whoops. Oh, well. But
guess it's the library for us.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're sneaking in a little flask.
I mean, I never, I didn't bring alcohol to school, but I was like, oh, I didn't know we signed off on how we were supposed to spend our free time. So, oops. Oh, well.
So, but was there a so you said you weren't all like jazzed about social work and stuff like that, but you still had a helping nature. You must have had some sort of desire to help people heal in some way. Yeah.
That's always I was always like the helper of friends. Friends would always come to me for support and advice and to listen. And so I think I really had a natural, inclination towards that. And I also noticed over the years that I think something that's different about me than other people is people can tell me the worst, most shameful, embarrassing, terrible things that they've done, that has happened to them, their thoughts, feelings, and it doesn't make me uncomfortable. And that it truly doesn't make me feel uncomfortable, and people can feel that. So they feel safe sharing. Now, that doesn't, most of the time when people share or they're about to share something, I say, it's more uncomfortable for you than it is for me. And that's often usually a block. People will be like, well, I don't want to share because I don't want you to look at me differently, or I don't want you to judge me. And it's like, well, you're projecting. It's you looking at you differently. It's you judging you, and it's not me. But even with other therapists and so forth, I noticed, many don't have that comfort level, especially even around like suicidality and things like that. So I think that's something that made me stand out in the field, but I think that just is natural to who I am as a person. That's huge. That's really huge. Having gone through quite a few therapists, and my last therapist was the one that really fit for me and really made a difference. There was other ones that, weren't bad, weren't great, that I always felt like there was a little bit of judgment there. I always felt like, and this last therapist I had really felt like a family member, like a mother, that was there, that, unburden yourself, my son, without the religious connotations, but it was like, and then she would call me out on my BS, but at the same time try to help me figure out why that BS is there, as opposed to what was happening in the past. And that was, so having that comfort level is so important. I can understand why that would be, why you were doing well. Yeah. Yeah. And they say like like finding a therapist is like dating. You kind of got to find the right fit.
Right.
So I was really good about putting my personality out on my website so that if people chose to work with me, they already kind of knew what they were getting as far as that I do like to call people out on their bullshit. And,
I imagine you like on your website with a sword and a shield being like, let's stab that shit in the heart, make you better.
Right. We're going into battle. And actually the thing that filled my therapy practice were 2 words on my website. I don't know if I ever told you this. They were shit happens. So you opened up the website. It was like this nice serene photo and like a little quote from me, and then you scroll down and then like in I don't know like 200 font or something insane across the whole it says shit happens.
Oh yeah.
And then people in that moment, and I know this because people told me this, in that moment they're like, she's my girl. She gets me, she understands me. And that's where that means like the non-judgmental stuff of like being willing to talk about the real raw feelings instead of this like fluffy, pretend. It almost feels like this pretend world. And you read these things and you're like, I don't know what world this girl's living in because it's definitely not my world, right? But then they read my stuff. They're like, oh, this is real. This is real life here.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I always found interesting was when I talked to therapists, so one thing I always wanted to know is like, all right, so who's your therapist?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you go to because you're a human being. So you're not, made of stone or whatever. You have a lot of the same problems that we all go through. And at some point you need to talk to somebody. So is it common for therapists to have therapists or? Yes,
it's common. It's recommended. It can look a lot of different ways. I had a supervisor. We call it supervision. So the license, I became an LCSWR, which that takes 6 to 7 years to get after you graduate. But I also hired on my own a therapist that trained me in EMDR and dissociation, but then I continued to pay for ongoing consultation. So you do learn about the therapy and how to implement it and how to work with your clients with it, but you also learn it for yourself. And back in, I think it was 2019, they do this Art of EMDR. I only went to one, but I went to one in Costa Rica. And
that's tough.
Yeah. And it's always early February.
What is EMDR? I've heard of it before.
It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Right. So it's mainly used to treat PTSD. Yep. And what it does is it takes the emotional charge out of a traumatic memory. So, when you think of something, it can be something even as mild of you have an embarrassing memory and you cringe every time you think about it. It can get rid of that to remembering highly traumatic events that paralyze you, and send you into flashbacks and so forth. So there was, they called it Art of EMDR in Costa Rica in the beginning of February, and actually I flew down on my birthday, so that felt fun. And we did. It was like training, but it was a lot of EMDR on each other for the entire week, where you can kind of go deeper into your own healing and your own work. So that's always been encouraged. I had an EMDR therapist as well myself for many years. And then I started dabbling more with coaching and the spiritual, maybe woo side of things. I had a lot of resistance with that for a lot of my life. I used to make fun of people. It's so funny. I always say anything I've always said I would never do or never be like.
You've become.
Yeah. Because like what we resist, there's a reason why there's a resistance there. It's really interesting. So then I started gaining a lot of value from that side of things.
I used to be a kind of against the woo, like not, but the woo is the woo rules.
It does.
It has to be done right. Mm-hmm. It has to be done with the right. And it's there. It's so hard to explain. It's like, it works as long as you're doing it right and you're authentic about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's the authenticity of it that doesn't, and that's kind of, I've touched on a lot of that stuff on this podcast too. And it's like, there's the toxic positivity where it's like, you've got to be positive today. Or that's like, no, I'm actually going to take a breath, and I'm going to think about this, and I'm going to try to change my thoughts and redirect where I'm going to be today.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot. It's a lot of both and. I use that phrase a lot.
Yep.
And so, yes, you do have to feel the feelings, acknowledge what's true, which actually is coming up. To pretend that you're not angry when you are angry is an assault on yourself. So it's important to acknowledge that, but then also knowing that there's always a learning, an opportunity, a golden nugget in whatever you're experiencing simultaneously, so that as you move through the anger or sadness or whatever's going on, you're also kind of tuned to this frequency so that you see that, and then you can, move through it in a positive way as well. So yeah, it's, they call it toxic positivity. They call it spiritual bypassing as a thing in the community as well. So yeah, there's negative ways you can do it, like with affirmations. You can say affirmations so you're blue in the face, but if you don't address the underlying doubts and fears that come up alongside of it, you're not going to get anywhere,
One of the biggest things that I work with on a daily basis is how I react to things, especially negative things or surprising things or things that I'm not happy with. That whole damn it, God damn it. Ask my wife.
Right.
Come on. I'm trying. I'm really trying. But she's like, I love when you say that. And that's, that's something that runs in my family. That's been probably for generations. Yeah. My father learned it from his father. I learned it from my father, and it just continues on. Thankfully, I don't think my kids, I've been trying hard to, or maybe they just don't listen to me. It's probably that. But that idea of trying to keep yourself in the moment so that your reactions don't take over, that's where I really have a struggle, and I'm trying really hard to do that. What's your go-to kind of thing to help people say, don't be so reactionary or whatever? You have the same problem that I'm having.
Yeah, no. And that's a big one for me. And I still work on that. So first you kind of really have to be aware of, it's usually like a control. So for me, like, that might look like everything's ruined, right? So it's like something, right? And you're you're just so frustrated. Everything's, so it's like recognizing the catastrophizing that your mind's doing around the situation, and recognizing what if everything wasn't ruined? What if there's an opportunity here? What if this is actually serving me? You can kind of up the level the more that you go. So it's really starting to look at, this is my ego that's driving the ship right now. And I'm in a state of control. So I'm not in a state of trust. I'm not in a place of love. I'm, disconnected from my deeper being. And so it's when you really start to, it's almost, so for me, it really goes into changing your worldview. And then as that worldview changes, then you can catch those things easier. Unfortunately, my daughter has picked up on those things, and she gets really frustrated and feels like everything's ruined and so forth. And having that reflected back to me.
Yeah, that's sobering.
Yeah.
That's sobering. I know. I joke like, yeah, my kids have a lot of my bad habits, but there's a lot of people that roll their eyes over, at what you just said, like that whole thing. Yeah. And I don't know if I would have been, rude enough to roll my eyes at what you just said, like at least in your presence. But I know that there's a whole group of people that are like, that's just, whatever.
Yeah.
Woo woo. That's the word that a lot of people use. That's just, sentimental bullshit or whatever. And what do you tell those people when you're confronted that? Because I'm sure it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Even with my clients, or when I can tell there's a resistance to something, I said, I'll say, well, argue with me, like come back, don't just kind of sit there either like in silence being like, well, I don't believe what she says, so I'm not going to say anything, right, or feel defeated about it or whatever, because the movement happens from that dialogue and looking at what those beliefs are. So, it's hard because the mind usually goes to evidence. Well, I have evidence that when this happens, that happens, or whatnot. And it's like, well, it's because that's what you believe, So what would it be like? Or are you willing? Are you even willing to just think that you're supported, that you're provided for, that things are going to work out? So if you can come into just being curious about a different way of thought is one thing I would maybe challenge them to do. Or one thing I did even in therapy, and it's like not the same topic, but it's kind of challenging someone of like, well, is what you're doing now working for you? Right? Like usually they're upset or frustrated or things.
How's that helping you?
Yeah, exactly. How's that working out for you? Not well. Okay, well,
do something different.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's such a simple kind of way to look at it. Mm-hmm. It's a simple thing. So being all crazy and pissed off right now, how's that working for you? How's it do? So although some people do kind of thrive in that headspace, like they love to be in the chaos and the drama, and that's where they live. And you see them on Facebook all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting too, because one thing that, especially when I was building my therapy practice, I recognized it. And even to some extent with my coaching. So there's a little bit of wisdom in the emotion here. And that's why I say it's always this both and. So what would happen when I was building my therapy practice, I'd get to these places where I just like break down. I'm like, why aren't people scheduling? This is so hard. And I'm never, I would have like my little hissy fit, temper tantrum. That's usually the words I use. And after I would have my little temper tantrum, I'd get like a new client inquiry.
You're like, fine.
Right. So then and I noticed that pattern happen a lot. And I'm like, why is my negative behavior being positively reinforced? Like I saw this and I knew what was happening. I'm like,
that's funny.
Why is this happening? So what I think was happening was I was being honest with my feelings, and I was feeling them. And that can clear out like a lot of stuck energy to bring energy in. And then the reason to kind of figure out how do I clear my emotions, but in like a less temper tantrum-y way, is really just to serve yourself so that you're in a more positive, happier mindset so that you're not like freaking out. But it is okay to kind of look at like, oh, I'm feeling really disappointed right now. I feel like I'm working really hard and I'm frustrated about my results, right? Like that's just a more calmer way to be honest about how you're feeling.
Something that you said earlier was the acknowledging your feelings, acknowledging what you're going through at the time. I think a lot of people I mean, I know I did skip that part.
Yep.
You're feeling it, you're in it, and you're bitching and moaning about things and you're pissed off and everything. And you never think of taking the step and go, okay, what's going on right now? Let's take a step out, take a pause, take a breath and go, all right, so this happened. What does that mean? Yep. How did that really ruin my day? How, examine it. And even just taking that break to and examine it, first of all, is going to drop the emotion levels down because now you're redirecting, right?
Yeah.
I'm starting to try to learn your stuff.
I love it.
But then you can, so do you have like a list, like steps, like and you're in the situation, here's what you should do. 1, 2, 3, 4, and do that.
Yeah. I mean, you can obviously, take a few deep breaths, like there are not any steps that nobody doesn't know, right? That's the thing is people know what they need to be doing. They're just not doing it. And I know that because that was also me where I'm like, I don't want to take some deep breaths. I don't want to calm down. Right.
Yeah.
So
don't you tell me to calm down.
Right. So that's where I would then say, look at that resistance from even doing the steps because it's not rocket science. I don't need to give you a formula. You have your own formula. And it's really working with the resistance of giving yourself permission that things can go well in your life. And why am I so resistant to believing that and trusting in that? There's some fear of loss there. And that's where I would then kind of direct people in being. Because once you really address that, you don't need any steps, And it's just like that. But you stop, recognize, okay, I'm in some sort of control pattern. So therefore my ego is running the show. And I'm kind of, like I said earlier, I'm not in a place of trust. Like that's all it always really comes down to,
That's all.
I mean, those are big things.
How many people do you know that can sit back and go, oh, my ego is totally taking control right now?
It's when that's right. So this is what I do. I constantly absorb it. And I go in phases, that information. I'll go on walks and just listen to Alan Watts. I used to listen to Eckhart Tolle before I went to bed, like almost every night. You can go on YouTube and just listen to Joe Dispenza talk. And your mind is going to want to understand it, one. It's going to want to argue with it, two. Oh, I want to talk about this. So the reason why we argue and we're resistant to a lot of this information is because it brings us face to face with the fact that we've given our power away for so long and that things, quote, could have been different, and that we had the power to make it different. And that is really confronting to see yourself as the source of your suffering. So at the end of the day, if I were to give like a blanket statement as to what our resistance really is, it's that taking responsibility piece, because it feels so much better to blame anything other than ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you've played that take responsibility card on me a couple of times, which the first couple of times I was like,
yeah, exactly.
But now after I've seen the results of that mindset is to, all right, let's think this out. And even my wife has noticed it. Like I'll be like, yeah, you know what? I didn't express that properly. Mm-hmm. I didn't communicate that well enough to you. I apologize.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. And
and now it's like everything went, wow, it didn't blow up. We stopped. We stopped right now. We're moving on. We're eating dinner and everything's fine.
Right. Yeah. And that feels magical to me. And like, those are just a few little words and they can completely transform your life. And it's because you shifted your energy and you weren't in the, I need to prove my point. I need to make sure that this person understands. I need to stay convicted in whatever thing's going on for me. But yeah, it's taking the ego to the side and moving through with that. And that's really hard to do. But that's why I do encourage that coming back of like, yeah, give me your resistance. Like, let's work with this. Let's find out, because otherwise we're not going to see those results.
Mm-hmm. What would you say, and I don't know if you can even answer this question, but what would you say that I'll say our society, the society in this country that, and it's, what is the most important thing that we need as human beings in this society to be better?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a big question.
It is a big question, but so part of why I do this work in the way that I do it is I truly believe the best thing that we can do for others is to work on ourselves. So you just gave the perfect example, but by you doing the work, like you said, your wife noticed and she had a better day because of the work that you did.
Right.
And that's what I call like the ripple effect, is that if we all work on ourselves, not only will we be positively impacted, but we will positively impact every human being that we interact with, that is in our field, that can feel our energy. And so I think that's why I go about it this way, is just really become more self-aware and also live your dreams. And so I talk about that a lot too, because we deserve it. And so if we actually take responsibility for our lives, put in the effort and energy to build what we want, we're going to be happier people. And I think if we all do that, we'll all be happy. And then we can give from a better place. A lot of people will give from a place that is self-destructive, that doesn't honor their needs and is over-sacrificing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem as well, because then it also just perpetuates this I need to be saved, or other people need to be saved. And so it takes that self-responsibility out of the equation. And I think that's a real persistent problem.
So, yeah, be responsible for yourself.
Yeah. It's like, that's it. But yes, that's really hard. It's almost like growing up. Like,
yeah,
like we got to grow up.
Yeah, but it's true. But you don't think of it like that. You know, you think of it, grow up. When someone says, "Oh, grow up," what does that mean?
Right.
That means what? Take responsibility for your actions.
Right. Yeah, your life. Like, how does it look? Are you getting what you want? If not, take responsibility for it and make it different.
Don't blame.
Right. Yeah. And so it's this maturation. And I think that's been a lot of the work that I've been working on over the past few years. And with one of the coaches I was working on was really this like maturation into where I'm at now. Because how am I going to hold space for other people? How am I going to support them in their dreams if I'm not at that level? I'm not going to be able to. Yeah. Yeah.
And they say you can't truly love other people until you love yourself, which I think there's something to be said about that. It's really true, because as I, working with you, became more understanding, and this is the same with my last therapy sessions that I had, as I came to understand myself more and understood why I was acting the way I was and why I was doing certain things, I could give myself a break.
Mm-hmm.
I could be like, all right, well, so you're not a dipshit. You're not a bad person. Your brain is reacting this way because of this. And now if you can recognize that, then you can maybe stop it from reacting that way, go a different way, and become a better person, which is in turn going to, like you said, affect all of the people that you deal with on a daily basis.
Yep.
It's the Scrooge thing, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Now go and get me a fattened goose.
Yeah, that's funny because I took my daughter to see I Love a Christmas Carol, but yeah, and it's that softening, and that's really vulnerable, and I think that's also right why we resist the work, because we have to get really soft and squishy and vulnerable, and it's gross and icky, and I'm like, I don't wanna. But maybe that's just my experience. I don't know.
No, I think you pretty much just described about 95% of the population.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, but that's always my biggest compliment back to the, like, when my clients' spouses say things like, well, you got to keep working with Stacey because right, they have benefited so much from the work that always tickles me. Yeah. So
what's up for you? Like, is there anything exciting coming up for you that you want to let people know about? Or
I've always got exciting things.
I know.
So the next, I don't want to say program that I'm running is Radical Self-Love. So I decided to do that for February, Valentine's Day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, all that stuff. So we're going to start, it's a 2-week program starting on my birthday, February 3rd, and I'm going to end on Valentine's Day. So that is going to be about that softening, opening, receptivity, coming into yourself, working with those vulnerable parts of self that allow love in and allow us to give love from a more truer and deeper place instead of like that fixing, control, manipulative place that people often don't want to admit that they're functioning from. So that's coming up, and I'm excited about that. So if anybody's, I don't know, this might not go out.
Well, I don't know. I think I'm going to try to get this out as soon as possible. So we'll see. I'll let you know if this doesn't, if this post way after this is happening, and we'll just cut this whole shit out. But I don't plan on that. I will have to say to the 3 or 4 people that are listening and watching, if you've ever considered getting a coach, a business coach, a personal coach to help you to be a better person, a better entrepreneur, a better employee, a better manager, whatever it is, a better person, better human being, talk to Stacey. Check out her website. What's the website?
It's a Radical Life Coach.
Radical Life Coach. And it is radical. It is 100%. I can attest. It's radical because I'm telling you, I was a naysayer. I was like, and the reason why I chose Stacey is because just because of a mutual connection with Todd Youngman, and you came in here and we talked about a podcast or whatever. And I was like, she's pretty cool. And then I started seeing your posts about your coaching and everything like that. And I've been doing this podcast for quite a few years and have talked to umpteen people who talked about getting coaches and having these coaching mentors and things. And I was like, at a point where I'm like, what can I do to invest in myself to help things get better? And it just sort of all clicked together. And I'm like, this is what I need to do. And I even tried to back out of it because I remember I had bad things happen just like the day after I signed up and we had our first talk. Everything went south. Like people walked away and I was like, what? This isn't going to happen. I can't afford it anymore. And then I stopped myself and I said, no, you're not going to let that fear run away. You're not going to run away with that fear. So
yeah, I was impressed, to be honest, right from the get-go when you did that. Actually things started coming undone before you even paid. Yeah. And so I was really impressed that you did that. And I guess my question for you, are you glad that you took that risk? Did you make your money back?
Oh, I think so. I think geez, it's so much more valuable than income,
Right.
than an invoice. You know, it's changing how I view things and how I react. It's a slow process. I'm not like perfect now, and I never will be. And you know, even today, I had some things that I was like, I probably could have handled that a little bit better. But I think at the very bottom line is you've helped me with my self-awareness to be aware of when those things are happening and when I'm acting a certain way, and to try to jump in and stop it and change it and make it better. And I think that's just like you said, like everybody needs that. It's time to grow up. It's time to grow up, Fitz.
Right.
So do yourself a favor, hit up Stacey on our website and join our group. If you want to join our group, it's great. I'm in a group with mostly women.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a welcoming environment. You have cheerleaders that are there to help you and cheer on even your smallest wins. Like, I tied my shoes today. And you're like, yeah. You know, and it sounds silly, but God, do we need that? We need that we need cheerleaders so much. And some people that just don't have a cheerleader at all. And there's some people have tons of cheerleaders, and good for you.
Right. But
there's some people that don't have a cheerleader at all. And, you know, if you got to pay for a cheerleader, it's not I'm minimizing it
right.
crazy, but if that's how you have to start to see that, to see the value in that cheer, it just becomes
it builds on itself.
It builds on itself.
It's exponential. And there's a quote, and I wish I remember who it was from. I was trying to look for this months ago and I could not find it. But it's something like, you pay me for my education, my time, my energy. The love is for free.
That's a perfect way to end this Positive Blatherings. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your wisdom with us. And I'm looking forward to actually have a session in a couple hours.
Yes. See you soon.